The Filipino year is marked by ritual and tradition. In the season of Dayaw, we will relish the preparations and celebrations that have defined our many cultures. What do we as Christians, as animists, as Islamic Filipinos value most? And how do we mark our years to show our collective aspirations? Tayo'y magdiwang at magpasalamat as we mark the milestones of the Filipino year. This is Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride. In January, just as we wake from the stupor of the Christmas holidays, the Filipino heart awakens to the dual celebrations of faith. The faith is centered on two important icons. The first is that of the Nuestro Señor Cristo Nazareno, who embodies our sufferings, patience, our endurance. The second is that of the Santo Niño, who embodies our optimism, our joy, our childlike exuberance. How do both icons reflect the many facets of the folk psyche? And how do the rituals and traditions connect to the ways in which we worship and survive? A brown-skinned man, his face in anguish as he bears the cross. He has stumbled and is in the process of trying once again to stand and continue on his way to a humiliating and painful death. The Nuestro Señor Jesus Nazareno is revered as an enduring symbol of the Filipino Catholic faith, and yet, this icon has roots in another colony of Spain. Carved by an unknown Mexican carver in the 16th century, the image was transported to the Philippines by galleon in 1606. Originally, the image was cared for by the Recollects and enshrined in the Church of San Nicolas in Intramuros. In 1787, a copy of the image was donated by the Recollects to the Quiapo Church. There is still some mystery about the image currently enshrined in Quiapo. According to some sources, the original Mexican image had been destroyed together with the Church of San Nicolas during the bombardment of Manila in World War II. Thus, the image now venerated is the copy that was donated by the Recollects. The image in Quiapo Church is a composite, with the original head of the donated santo, with a body carved by the sculptor Henner Magla. The image wears a wig of abaca held in place with a golden crown of thorns and a set of potencia, rays symbolizing the power of the Trinity. His heavily embroidered garments are in maroon, a color since associated with the Nazareno's followers. The traslacion, the great procession that honors the image's journey from the Church of San Nicolas in Intramuros to its present home in Quiapo, is one of the most moving and spontaneous manifestations of folk faith, in all its strength and fervor. 2 days before the January 9 fiesta, the image is moved from his home in Quiapo to the Quirino Grandstand near Intramuros, where he is venerated by the faithful.
Una, naramdaman yung presensya ng Diyos, naramdaman nila na nakaka-relate yung imahe ng Nazareno sa kanilang pinagdadaanan. Ito yung humila o humatak sa mga tao na, yun nga, sabi nga lagi ni Cristo, lumapit kayo sa akin, kayong mga napapagal. At kapag tinitingnan mo yung imahe ng Nazareno, ay talagang nagkakaroon ng kapanatagan.
In 1650, Pope Innocent had granted recognition to the lay confraternity, the Cofradia Santo Cristo Jesus Nazareno, in order to popularize the devotion to Jesus. The original confraternity lives on today through the many organizations devoted to the Nazareno.
Tinatawag na Cofradia para pangalagaan yung imahe ng Nazareno. Kasama na po dyan yung, siyempre, pangangalaga sa mismong imahe, pagdadamit o pagbibihis na silang, kumbaga, nagpresenta na kami yung tutulong. Hanggang sa Cofradia, nawala na yung mga naunang bumuo nito. Hanggang sa ngayon, ang pinaka-latest na pangalan ng grupo ay Hijos del Nazareno. At sila yung nangangalaga talaga dito sa imahin and at the same time dun sa prosesyon.
Meron kaming 6 na grupo ng mga Hijos del Nazareno. Andiyan yung Hijos Ampon, Hijos Basilica, Hijos Bukluran, Hijos Central, tsaka Hijos NPGN. Basta yung 6 na grupo na yun, may kanya-kanyang torno yan pagka lalabas ang prosesyon. Kung sino yung unang torno, sila yung sasamparon. Ngayon, bawat grupo may kanya-kanya yung balangay. Yung mga nasa taas, yun yung nasa grupo. Tapos yung nasa baba naman, kadalasan dyan, may mga balangay na, halimbawa, balangay ng Ampon o balangay ng Central. Yun yung tutulong naman sa baba, yung nasa lubid. Sila yung kasi talagang magulo, minsan sila yung nag-aayos nun. Para maging maganda yung agos ng prosesyon, nandun yun. Kasi yung pito sa taas, yung nangangalaga na kung sino yung nandun na hiyos, yun ang magsisenyas kung ano yung dapat gawin. Kung na-8 yung lubid, nagkakagulo, sila yung magbibigay ng senyas kung ano ang dapat gawin. Kung nababalaho yung andas, yung nasa taas ang kung lilipat sa kaliwa o lilipat sa kanan. Kasi minsan talaga yung bugso ng tao, kahit sabihin mo may balangi ka dyan, pagka nagkasabay-sabay yung individual, andyan na yung magkakagulo-gulo na yung takbo.
These organizations gather every Friday of the year, but their great force is shown during the traslacion. To the outsider or the skeptical unbeliever, the traslacion may seem a chaotic and unruly exercise. But there is indeed a time-honored method to the perceived madness. The marshals, the Hijos de Nazareno, guide the teeming mass through the route from the grandstand back to Quiapo Church, using only megaphones and a traditional set of hand signals and whistles. The honor guards are the only ones allowed to ride the andas and surround the image. The rest of the great teeming throng, the mamamasan, must rely on these directions, as well as on a keen mindfulness of the risks and dangers they face so fearlessly and faithfully.
Wala naman sigurong nanay na gustong may sakit ang anak at wala ring magulang na gugustuhin makita ang anak na may sakit at saka alam mo na yung kahihinatnan dahil kasabihan nga ang anak ang naglilibing sa magulang, hindi yung nanay. Habang nabubuhay ang anak ko at kung sakasakaling dumating yung time, hindi na ako sa pagdedebosyon kasi sobra ng biyaya yung araw-araw, minuto, dagdag buhay sa anak ko.
Ang mensahe ng imahe ng Nazareno ay mensahe ng pag-asa at mensahe ng pag-ibig. Yung mga taong nawawalan na ng pag-asa o sa tingin nila parang bagsak na sila, lumapit ka at tumingin ka sa Nazareno, mabubuhayan ka ng loob. At yung mga nagdududa na sila po ay kayang patawarin, sila ay kayang, o sila ay pwede pang ibigin ng Diyos, tumingin ka sa imahe ng Nazareno, mararamdaman mo na sa kanyang pagpasan ng krus ay tanda ito ng pagmamahal ng Diyos sa tao. Na kahit ano pang nagawa, kahit ano pang pagkatao mo, ililigtas at ililigtas ka ng poong Jesus Nazareno.
It seems fitting that the actual image, now venerated, is a copy of the Mexican original, said to have been destroyed during the Second World War. The Señor Nazareno has come full circle, translated as both an object and an icon into a symbol of a robust and enduring folk faith.
Walang iba kang kakapitan kundi pananampalataya. Kahit anong dami mo ng pera, kahit anong nang magagawa mo, kung wala ka namang faith, pananampalataya sa Kanya, wala din.
Sa akin, hanggat siguro may lakas ako, may hininga ako na kaya kong maglingkod. Kasi sa akin naman, ang ano naman dyan, importante kasama mo siya. Basta nananali ka, naniniwala kasama mo siya. Walang imposible.
And this is what the devotion is all about. The Filipino goes through so much sacrifice. For example, to join the Feast of the Black Nazarene, in Quiapo every January 9 requires, well, that you endure so much hardship. You may get trampled even to death, no? There's so much pain, but this pain is really liberating because it enables you to experience the suffering of Christ, and because of this suffering, you show that you are ready to offer your life, to offer your inner self, no? To believe in the mission of Christ, which is to purify oneself.
It always comes as a pleasant surprise to see Santo Niño images dressed as doctors, policemen, street sweepers, soldiers, and even race jockeys. We see this child smiling and without guile, and we project unto him all that we most fervently pray for in our hearts. There is dancing, music, parades, costumes, but underneath all the pageantry is an unshakable faith.
The history of the Santo Niño in the Philippines is better known than that of the Nazareno. The image itself is small at 12 inches. He is made all the more voluminous by the glittering trifold cape that envelopes him and by the tiered pedestal on which he stands. In April 7, 1521, when the image was first gifted by Ferdinand Magellan to Hara Humamay, the wife of Raha Humabon in Cebu. It was most likely a simple image carved in the round. Not many Filipinos know that Magellan's gifts to the native queen also included an image of Mary and an anguished Christ. The Niño was rediscovered by Miguel López de Legazpi during the Second Spanish Expedition in 1565. After burning down coastal towns that had resisted colonization, the image was found in a deserted hut. The discovery was to set off the devotion that lives on to this day, most dazzlingly in the Sinulog of Cebu.
¡Viva Señor Santo Niño! ¡Viva Señor Santo Niño! ¡Viva Pit Señor! ¡Viva Pit Señor!
The Sinulog may be the most popular of the Santo Niño festivals. With the concerted efforts of both civic and local government organizations, the festivity has become a spectacle and major tourism attraction. It might be observed that the devotion is almost upstaged by the street dancing, the local beauty competitions, and many other events that have grown around the devotion. Cebu's Sinulog is perhaps the best example of how a devotion is transformed through community and national effort. The result is a show of force of a different kind, reinterpreted by popular culture, by our fascination for spectacle and for grand gestures. While it may be a spectacle for tourists, there is still, underneath, a current of genuine faith. In festivities like the Ibahay Ati-Atihan, we see humbler roots of the devotion to the Santo Niño. Simpler perhaps, but nonetheless heartfelt.
Tawag namin dito Santo Niño Ati-Ati. Piyesta ni Santo Niño na may ati-ati. Tinatawag tong piyesta kasi sa parangal sa patron, Santo Niño. Tapos naglalagay ng mga uling kasi ito yung kinagisna naming paniniwala, tradisyon na pinitensya ito eh. Kasabay ito sa milagro mismo kung paano ang Santo Niño nagkaroon kami ng Santo Niño dito sa Ibahay. Sa story niya, kasama ito. Kasi ang Santo Niño na yan ay piece of wood lang yan noon na nakita dito sa ilog ng Ibahay. Tawag ng mga Espanyol niyan ay Panay Aklan Ibahay Rio.
In Aklan, the history of prayer and festivity devoted to the Niño was transformed with the inclusion of the mythic barter of Panay. Thus, two accounts have been melded into one festivity.
Noong mid-70s yun, nagsimula na doon yata inumpisang tinawag na ati-atihan. Dinagdagan ng term na ati-atihan dahil ini-include nila yung supposedly barter of Panay na pagdating dito ng mga foreigners, maitim yung mga tao. So, naglagay din sila ng itim sa katawan para magiging credible din sila somehow. No? Kaya parang playing like ati, so ati-atihan.
Ang sayaw, ginagawa na kung paano na perde ng mga Kristiyano ang muro sa tulong ni Señor Santo Niño.
Mas tumibay kasi pag na-observe mo, siyempre nung una-una, medyo yung mga konti na lang mga devoto. Pero nung mabalitaan nila na, ay, miraculous talaga ang ninyo, ganun. As far as faith is concerned, talagang umunlad ang faith nila. Kasi sa belief nila, yun bang, meron talagang nagsasabi na, miraculous ang ninyo, dapat pumunta tayo, ganun. So yan, ma-observe ninyo, noon wala yung mga naka-wheelchair eh. Kasi, ano ito eh, sayaw to eh, at saka kailangan talaga kilos, movement. So yung may mga sakit, hindi dapat pumunta. Pero ngayon, dahil nga sa belief na makatulong sa kanila, pupunta sila. Lalo na doon sa kumbento, yung pagbaba talaga, punong-puno yung kumbento. Halos lahat gustong lumapit sa ninyo.
Naway huwag kalimutan ang tunay na diwa ng pagkaroon ng piyesta ng Santo Niño. Hindi lang ito kasiyahan, kundi combination ito, penitensya at pagsasaya.
With all the glitz and glamour that have transformed the Sinulog, there must be some authentic root that needs to be discovered. Humbler perhaps and less showy, but more heartfelt. An authentic folk expression of prayer that mixes chant, music, and role-playing. We find that in the work of Carolina Diola.
Prayer as a chanted and danced performance. This is a ritual of the sinulog that is preserved by Carolina Diola and her troupe.
Ang amin naman, kami ang original, yung Santo Niño, hindi namin isasayaw yan. Ilalagay namin ng isang lamisa at isang kandila, yan ipatinti namin yung Santo Niño sa isang lamisa bago kami magsasayaw.
Far removed from the glitz and glamour of the sinulog we know, but deeper in roots, in faith, and in practice. Carolina learned the original sinulog from her grandparents, who were foremost practitioners called upon to perform the ritual by old families. In the original ritual, the Niño is never held aloft to be danced. Instead, an elaborate prayer cycle, the alabacion, is first recited by a child before the entire troupe dances before it.
Yung llamada, ang tinatawag noon ay pumunta na sila sa kanilang pwesto, yung llamada. Yung ripaso, magripaso na yan para mag-umpisa na yung sayaw namin. Pagkatapos, mayroong isang batang magsasalita na matamis na batal.
Malindot, maambungan na bata, makabihag sa unang-una. Bilingon labi sa mutya, among dungog o himaya. Kalipay nga mong yuta, kalipay nga dili mapala.
Pagkatapos noon, magsayaw na naman ng natural nga sayaw. Pagkatapos sa natural, kakanta sila ng Senyor. Pagkatapos, sumayaw sila ng pakli. Pagkatapos sa pakli, kakanta sila ng traslacion. Tapos sa pakli, tukod espada. Tapos sa tukod ng espada, kakanta sila ng Yael Oriente. Katapos sa Yael Oriente, sasayaw kami ng kinampilan. Hanggang magsayaw sila ng Battle of Mactan.
In older pre-commercial sinulog times, this ritual was commonly performed upon request by families during times of both adversity as well as thanksgiving.
Sana ang mundo mawala yung mga disgrasya. Gusto namin ng kalinaw. Yun, hiningi namin yan sa Señor Santo Niño, ang kalinaw sa buong bansa.
Highly devotional people, and they can easily identify with the archetypes, or what we call mythological concepts that have to do with the culture, the most important things in the culture. One is that Filipinos are highly child-centered. We love to cuddle the baby, and everybody dotes on the baby. And therefore, the Santo Niño is a very good symbol of the child, the playful child. At the same time, Santo Niño, being the Christ child, becomes the center of devotion. Not only is the Santo Niño playful, but the Santo Niño is also sacred. And that's why the Filipinos revere the Santo Niño as both a sacred figure and as a kind of playful child. And if you are going to show your devotion to the Santo Niño, you have to play non-stop with the Santo Niño. And of course, it requires a superhuman ability for you to be able to play non-stop. But that's the very essence of the ati-atihan. You play the drum, you dance, you sing, you do any kind of performance that is in the spirit of playing with the Santo Niño. This is to show you the devotion to the Santo Niño is also a form of sacrifice, but at the same time playing with the Christ child.
A child smiles cheerfully and holds up his hands in benediction. A brown-skinned man suffers nobly, bearing the weight of a cross and of all our prayers. Onto these two icons, what we have projected and what do we see? Mirrors held up to our own souls so that we see clearly our own failings and frailties. As we survive and aspire for a better life, the Niño and Nazareno prod us on, encouraging us to find the hope within ourselves. The child tells us to find our strength in our smiles. The man tells us to bear our crosses with dignity and resilience. Yes, they both say, yes, it will come. Whatever it is you most fervently pray for, it will come. Magsumikap lang, huwag mawalan ng tibay ng loob. Nasa Diyos ang awa, nasa tao ang gawa. Our faith then is a reflection of Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.